"I'm not pretty," she whispered, her voice barely louder than the hum of the old ceiling fan. The words felt like dust on her tongue, familiar, heavy, and bitter. The house was quiet except for the ticking clock and the distant hum of cattle beyond the porch. Her husband, Tom, had already left for the day before the sun had even climbed over the horizon. He always did. He worked hard, came home tired, and carried silence like a shadow. Clara ran her fingers along the rim of her coffee mug, watching the steam twist and disappear. There was no one to notice the new lines near her eyes, or the way her hair fell loose and dull. Once, Tom used to tuck it behind her ear and say she looked like morning light. Now, he just nodded when she spoke, eyes always somewhere else on the weather, the crops, the quiet distance between them. She opened a drawer and found an old photograph, their wedding day. Her dress was simple, her smile unguarded. Tom's arm wrapped proudly around her waist. That woman felt like a stranger now. Clara pressed her thumb over the image, trying to feel something familiar. But all she felt was the paper's smoothness and the ache of memory. That evening, she set dinner on the table. Tom thanked her without looking up. The sound of his fork scraping the plate filled the air that used to hold laughter. She wanted to ask him if he still saw her, if she still mattered, but the words froze. Later, she noticed a flyer pinned to the kitchen board: horse auction, Saturday, in town. She didn't need a horse, but she told herself it would be good to go. She wanted the drive, the air, maybe a reason to remember what living used to feel like. The sun was high when she reached the auction yard. The sound of horses and chatter filled the air, a rhythm she hadn't felt in years. Clara moved quietly through the crowd, her boots brushing against the dust. That's when she heard his voice, low, easy, carrying a kind of warmth she hadn't realized she missed. "You've got a good eye for horses," he said. She turned, meeting the calm gaze of a man with a worn hat and a patient smile. His name was Luke. They talked about simple things: feed, saddles, weather, but every word seemed to rest somewhere deeper. He listened, really listened, and she found herself laughing without meaning to. It startled her, the sound of her own laughter. He asked if she lived nearby. She said yes, on the old Harris ranch. "Must get quiet out there," he said, not as a question, but like he understood. She nodded, eyes drifting to the horizon. Quiet could be peaceful, but lately it felt like being erased. Luke tilted his head, studying her like someone who noticed more than she wanted to show. He didn't flirt. He didn't need to. His silence felt like invitation enough. When a bay mare trotted out, Clara mentioned how strong and graceful it looked. Luke smiled and lifted his hand to bid. "You've got good taste," he said softly as the hammer fell. Her breath caught, not because of the horse, but because someone had done something just for her. They said goodbye with polite smiles, but her heart carried the moment home. That night, lying beside Tom, she tried to picture his face, but all she saw was Luke's quiet grin under the brim of his hat. She hadn't been touched, but something in her already had. The days passed, but her thoughts refused to obey. Luke's voice lingered in the quiet, his words echoing between chores and sleepless nights. She told herself it meant nothing, that it was only kindness mistaken for care. Yet every errand became an excuse: feed, tools, a neighbor to check on. She always found her way toward town, hoping, never admitting what she was hoping for. When she saw him again near the feed store, he smiled like he'd been waiting. "Didn't expect to see you today," he said. "Didn't expect to come," she answered, though both knew better. He asked how she'd been, and she wanted to lie, but the truth spilled out in small pieces: loneliness, silence, the feeling of fading inside her own home. Luke didn't interrupt. He just listened, eyes steady, shoulders soft. Later that week, rain caught her on the road. She turned into his barn for shelter, breathless and trembling from the storm. Lightning lit his face for a moment before darkness settled again. He stepped closer, brushing the wet strands from her forehead. "You deserve to smile more," he whispered. She should have walked away, should have said something about Tom, about vows and promises, but the words never came. His hand stayed, gentle, unsure, and then her own lifted to meet it. The world outside roared, wind howling, thunder rolling, but inside there was only the sound of two hearts trying to remember warmth. When he kissed her, it wasn't passion that broke her, it was relief. Relief that someone still saw her. When the rain stopped, she left without a word. Driving home, guilt pressed heavier than the storm. Tom greeted her with his usual quiet, and for the first time, his silence felt like punishment she had earned. The note was short, written in Luke's rough handwriting. "You are beautiful. Don't forget it." No explanations, no promises, just a final kindness that hurt more than any lie could. Clara read it again and again until the words blurred. He was gone, and what was left was silence, different now, heavier. She folded the paper carefully, though it already felt like something she shouldn't keep. Tom found it by accident. He didn't shout, didn't curse. He stood there, the note trembling slightly in his hand. His eyes met hers, tired and wounded. The air between them felt sharp, like broken glass. "Is it true?" he asked quietly. She didn't answer, because denial would only humiliate them both. The truth hung there, wordless but complete. Tom nodded once and walked out, the door closing softly behind him. Clara sank to the floor, her body shaking but no tears coming. She wanted him to rage, to demand an explanation, anything but that quiet. Guilt burned through her, the kind that doesn't fade. Hours later, she stepped outside. The field stretched endlessly, the horizon distant and merciless. She whispered to the wind, "I'm not pretty." The words came back to her softer, almost forgiving. The next morning, Tom returned. They didn't speak of it again. He fixed the fence, she made breakfast. Every movement felt fragile, like glass trying not to shatter. Yet beneath the wreckage, something unfamiliar stirred, not forgiveness, not yet, but a will to try. She kept Luke's note only long enough to memorize it, then burned it in the sink. The ashes rose, disappearing into the morning light. She wasn't the same woman who'd whispered those words into an empty mirror. She was broken, yes, but broken things, she thought, could still be mended if they were honest enough to begin.